Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, everyone. We are going to get started today, and we thank you all for taking the time out of your very busy schedules to attend our second in-person BAPAC meeting. We have been on Zoom for the last almost 4 years, and we're so thankful that you're here. And we're in for an amazing event today, and we have some amazing leaders here. And I would like to just, if you don't mind, if you would bow your heads, and I would just like to open up with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you today for the opportunity to convene, and we thank you for these wonderful individuals and leaders of our community that have come out to share, and we thank you for the opportunity to be able to celebrate these amazing leaders that are doing great work in our community. And we would like you to know that, God, this meeting will be dedicated to your glory and your honor. Amen. I'm going to just move right into our program today. We are on Facebook, so I'd like to welcome our Facebook audience that will be appearing, watching all of us. So you wonderful panelists and leaders, we're going to make y'all movie stars today. We'll go all over the world, actually. And so we're very excited about that particular opportunity. We have two wonderful individuals here that had reached out to me about two very important topics, and I'm going to introduce them and let them share with you the topics of importance. And the first one is Esteban Gonzalez, who is from Sharp Mesa Vista Hospital. He is a clinical trials specialist, and he does a lot of work in the Neurological Research Center. He's going to be our first presenter, and he'll speak for about 10 to 15 minutes. And then we have the County of San Diego, Ishmael Lopez here from Human Services Operation Manager. Self-Sufficiency Services is going to talk a little bit about CalFresh and how important it is to our community. You know, we're in a food desert area here, right here in this community, and we're honored that Ishmael has taken the time out to share some very important information that all of us should have, especially when we're dealing with food insecurity issues here in San Diego. Thank you. Esteban?
Thank you, Ellen. So my name is Esteban Gonzalez. I am with the Sharp Neurocognitive Research Center. We focus on clinical trials related to dementia and Alzheimer's. We have a number of studies that are currently enrolling right now for individuals of different stages of dementia and Alzheimer's, even individuals who are not showing any signs or symptoms currently, but may be at a higher risk. And I want to discuss a little bit about the studies that we're doing and also a little bit about dementia and kind of give a brief overview of what that is. And then also the importance of diverse participation. And if there's enough time, discussing a little tips about brain health and how we can maintain a healthy brain and maintain our memory. If there isn't enough time, I have my resource table back there, and you guys are more than welcome to approach me, and we can discuss some of those tips. But starting off, dementia is a severe loss of cognitive functioning that interferes with a person's daily life and activities. So as we get older, there is normal memory loss, which happens to everybody. For example, something common would be we're in our bedroom cleaning up, and then we get thirsty and we want to go to the kitchen and get a glass of water. But on the way to the kitchen, we forget why we went there in the first place. And then we're in the kitchen and are looking around and seeing, well, why did I come in here? And then we start walking back to our bedroom, and then that's when it hits us. I'm thirsty. I went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. So a lot of that is very normal, very common type of behavior. An individual that is going through symptoms of dementia would have gotten lost on the way to the kitchen, or gotten lost going home after leaving the home for a period of time. It's the inability to think, remember, or reason that's impacting our daily life. Some other symptoms are problems with self-management and performing everyday activities, changes in the ability to speak, understand and express words, impulsiveness, hallucinations, misbeliefs, and fears, difficulty with learning new skills, changes in behavior and mood, problems in the ability to focus and pay attention, and repeated questions and conversations and personality changes. So those are more symptoms related to dementia, aside from just memory impairment. So there are primary risk factors for dementia. A lot of these risk factors are fixed, which are ones that cannot be changed. For example, age. We cannot stop ourselves from getting older, unfortunately. And so as we age, our memory starts to become a little bit more impacted, and the functioning of our brain becomes impacted as well. Hearing loss, we can't change when hearing loss starts to happen. There are devices to help us with our devices to help us with our hearing, but we're not able to reverse hearing loss. Atherosclerosis, which is hardening of the arteries, a head injury, which we're not able to reverse either. Once we've had concussions, once we had a traumatic brain injury, we're not able to reverse that or change that. Parkinson's disease is another risk factor, as well as genetics. So if we have a family history of individuals who have gone through dementia, there's a possibility that it can be passed on to the next generation. Symptoms or risk factors that are modifiable, a lot of them have to do with medical conditions such as hypertension, diabetes, and obesity. Those are things that we can change with adequate exercise and appropriate diet. Alcohol use and smoking, those are behaviors that are not needed that we can definitely stop and modify and reduce. Untreated depression and social isolation. So if we are isolating ourselves, if we are no longer having the will to want to leave our home and to participate in daily life activities, that is impacting our cognitive functioning, which can then lead to dementia. Not necessarily guaranteed, but at least it's a risk factor. So making those changes in our lives and behaviors can possibly reduce the chances of developing dementia. Experts estimate that the number of people living with dementia will increase substantially over the next 40 years as the populations of individuals over the age of 65 increases from 54 million to 94 million by 2060. Okay. And so there are different types of dementia, and the most common type of dementia is Alzheimer's disease. And what Alzheimer's disease is, amyloid protein that forms abnormal clusters in our brain. Essentially what it's doing is it forms outside of the neuron, which blocks messages from being received by the other neurons. And if those messages are not being received, then there's no function for that specific neuron, and it starts to dwindle away and die. And this is pretty common among individuals 65 and older, but it does happen in individuals younger than 65. About 10% of people with Alzheimer's disease fall between 30 to 60 years old. There is a genetic marker that is starting to be associated with dementia. It's called apolyprotein E. And so an individual that has a variant of an E4 could indicate that they're at a higher risk of developing dementia in the future. And some of these individuals at the bottom, such as Rosa Parks, Sugar Ray Robinson, and Ronald Reagan, were individuals that developed dementia. Another type of dementia is frontotemporal disorder, which it impacts the prefrontal cortex of our brain, which is in charge of judgment and behavior and personality. Individuals that develop this may not have an impact with their memory because our memory is more so on the bottom of our brain in the hippocampus. So for example, an individual that is experiencing frontotemporal disorder would stand up in the middle of this presentation and start dancing around without any filter, without any knowledge that they're doing something inappropriate outside of the norm. Bruce Willis, a few months ago, came out, or his family came out saying that he was diagnosed with frontal temporal disorder. Another type of dementia is Lewy body dementia, which is another common type between the ages of beginning after the age of 50. What happens with Lewy body is that these cells form a balloon inside of the nerves, and it does not allow for the messages to leave their neuron, as opposed to when amyloid is blocking the messages from being received. This does the opposite and causes a traffic jam, for example. And Robin Williams, unfortunately, developed Lewy body dementia, and it was found out after they did an autopsy on him. So the current research that we're doing is to remove the amyloid deposits. So amyloid is a natural protein that we all have in our brain, and when it starts to accumulate, it becomes toxic, and it impacts our brain, which then starts to make it kill the cells and neurons in the brain. There's tau protein that helps stabilize the internal skeleton of nerve cells in the brain, and this internal skeleton has a microtubule shape through which nutrients and other essential substances travel to reach different parts of the neuron. What happens is that starts to break down and ends up blocking those neurons and cells from being able to send that communication out. So some of the studies that we are doing at our facility focus on anti-amyloid and anti-tau. One of the studies that we're doing are for individuals who may be at a higher risk of dementia, and we do a blood test to see if an individual qualifies. And if that individual does have that genetic marker, we do a PET scan to see how much amyloid has accumulated to a certain point. If there's a significant amount of amyloid, then the individual could participate in the study, and I could discuss that more with you after if you're interested in finding out. It's important to have a diverse population in our studies because we want to make sure that the medication is viable to every cultural group that we have. Predominantly, participants in clinical trials are Caucasian. About 75% of the participants are Caucasian. 13% identify as Hispanic Latino, 11% identify as Asian, 7% as African American, 1% Native American, and 5% identify as a different race. There is a lot of stigma in participating in clinical trials, especially with the way that participants were treated 100 years ago. I would like to say that level of treatment to participants is drastically changed. There is a lot of checks and balances that are set in place for the protection of the participant so that they're safely participating in the clinical trials. And our trials are completely voluntary, so if an individual is interested in participating, but they find that circumstances change or they're no longer interested in participating, they can definitely opt out of the study and without any consequence. African Americans, unfortunately, are 2 to 3 times more likely to develop dementia than our Caucasian counterparts. Are 1.5 times more likely to develop opposed to our Caucasian counterparts. So this disorder, this disease is impacting our culture, and we're not participating in the clinical trials that can definitely give us some kind of guidance in preventing or delaying the onset of this symptom or this condition. And given that many individuals are still reporting that they don't want to feel like a guinea pig, or they don't want to be sick by the medication. They don't trust pharmaceutical companies. They don't want to get a placebo if they do decide to participate, or they feel that they may not be treated fairly. A lot of those concerns are very valid, and we definitely speak with our participants about those concerns that they have. And I know for sure at our center we make sure that every individual is treated fairly, and that we we build a relationship with those individuals, because our studies do last for quite some time, some of them as long as 4 years, some of them as 2 years. And we want to make sure that when someone is participating and that they're coming into our center, that they are treated with respect and that they feel comfortable when they come to our center. So healthy ways to love our brain. We want to make sure that we're getting a good amount of exercise, about 150 minutes on average per week. So if on between 5 days or within 5 days, about 30 minutes a day of cardiovascular exercise, elevating your heart rate. And what that does is allow the blood and oxygen to flow through your body and help break down any of those plaques that are accumulating. We want to make sure that we're continuing to study and to learn new things, continuing to challenge our mind so that we're using our brain and not losing it. If you're a smoker, please stop smoking. Aside from all of the physical health issues that come along with smoking, it definitely is related to cognitive decline. Taking care of your heart health, so if obesity, stroke, high blood pressure, making sure you're meeting with your physicians and taking care of those conditions that you have. When you're riding in a car, make sure you're wearing a seatbelt. If you ride a bicycle or a motorcycle, making sure that you wear a helmet all the time to prevent any head injuries from happening. Making sure that you're eating the right foods. The Mediterranean diet and the Mind diet are ones that are highly recommended, that are filled with protein from fish and poultry, a lot of leafy greens, nuts, and if you're a wine drinker, a glass of wine a day is perfectly fine. Making sure that you're getting enough sleep, so average 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. What that does is it allows our brains to relax and kind of rid of any debris that happens during the course of the night. And so that the next day we're able to feel refreshed and able to process new information. Taking care of our mental health, so if anyone having issues with depression, anxiety, making sure that you're meeting with your physicians, providers, also buddying up and socialize, staying socially engaged, participating in activities such as this, and then continuing to challenge yourself, learning new things, learning a new instrument, learning a new language. Those are things that you can do to kind of help improve and maintain your memory. At our center, we do free memory screens for everybody, regardless of insurance, so you don't have to be a SHARP member to participate. Our information, we're located in Kearney Mesa, and the memory screen is about 15 to 20 minutes to complete, and we're able to provide additional resources and recommendations if needed. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you, Esteban, for being here with us today. And if you have questions, am I on? Is my mic on? Testing. Testing. Testing? Okay. My mic, yeah, I'm okay now. If you have questions for Esteban, he has his wonderful table set up in the back here, and you can ask more questions. I thought it's important that we share this information, particularly around participation in clinical trials. When Esteban reached out to me, I immediately contacted my favorite doctor, Dr. Suzanne Afalo, who confirmed the importance of African Americans participating in clinical trials. In fact, she reminded me that the COVID vaccine was able to really have an impact on our community because of our high level of participation. So we now understand the importance because it does save lives. And Esteban just reminded us it probably will save our minds as well if we participate. I'm going to now turn it over to Ishmael Lopez to talk a little bit about CalFresh from the San Diego County. Okay. Yes. You have it here. Okay. You want to sit here? Here we go. Okay. Can you see it?
Do you have the presentation? Oh, no? yesterday, but I emailed it yesterday.
Oh, okay, okay.
That's fine.
Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, I can just talk about it.
Okay.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. So very happy to be here this afternoon on this beautiful Saturday. So my name is Ismael Lopez. I am one of the managers at Hospital and Community Support Services, which is under the umbrella of HHSA. So today, I'm briefly going to talk to you all about some of the programs that we administer within self-sufficiency services and how folks can access some of these very essential programs that we work with. So the major three programs that we work with are Medi-Cal, CalWorks, and CalFresh, right? And I'll talk a little bit more about CalFresh because it is CalFresh Awareness Month, so I'll touch on that a little bit more. But basically, CalWorks is a program, which is a cash program, which helps families with children under the age of 18 who have a deprivation, right? So that deprivation could be an absence of one of the parents, a death of one of the parents, incapacitated, or unemployed. And when someone's eligible for the CalWorks program, they receive cash money through a card, which basically they can use that money to pay rent or to purchase whatever household items that they need. There are, income limitations for these programs, but basically CalWorks is a program designed for families where there is a deprivation for that child. Then we move on to the CalFresh program, right? So CalFresh is a food nutrition program where folks who are eligible to the CalFresh program get an EBT card, which acts like a debit card or a credit card, and they go to markets and purchase food. We always encourage folks to purchase nutritious food, but really folks are not limited to what type of foods they can purchase. It's up to the individual. With CalFresh, it's not limited to a family, so a single adult can qualify for the program. You are limited to what you can purchase, so it's only for food. And for the most part, it's unprepared meals. But if you are an older adult or you are homeless, then what we do is that we automatically enroll you in what we call the Restaurant Meals Program, which allows these individuals to actually purchase, to be able to purchase prepared meals. If someone is facing homelessness, there's no way for that person to store their food. It's going to be impossible for that person to cook their own food. So with the Restaurant Meals Program, it's automatic. Their card is automatically activated. We give them a little flyer where it states all the restaurants that participate in that program, and they can go and purchase their hot and prepared meals. And it is CalFresh Awareness Month, so during the month of May, we really try and go above and beyond to kind of just spread the message and let folks know about this program, which really helps stretch somebody's food budget, right? So it allows them a little bit of extra money so that they can go out there and get that food that they need. So we're currently participating in over 70 outreach events throughout the county. We're actually at Sweetwater High School this morning. We're at the Jacob Center down the street. We do targeted social media ads on Facebook, targeting our older adults, our college students who sometimes also face food insecurity. It's a simple message, right? Just, this is what the program is. There's a little link. Apply if you want on the spot. So that's the CalFresh program. And then we move on to the Medi-Cal program, which is basically your health insurance. And, we talked about, how important, taking care of your health is. So with the Medi-Cal program, it allows folks who qualify to have access to all sorts of preventive care, right? So that's what we call our full scope Medi-Cal. So if someone's eligible to Medi-Cal, then, they have this health insurance where they basically go and, take care of their eyesight, their hearing, anything that they need to be able to stay healthy and not wait until the last minute to, get sick and then, go to the hospital. Now, again, there are limitations as far as who can qualify, and for the most part, most programs, you do have to be here legally, have your legal status in order for you to qualify. Now, an important change to the Medi-Cal program happened last year, actually 1 year ago in May, where now individuals who are 50 and over may qualify for the Medi-Cal program regardless of immigration status. So that's a really significant change to the program, a really positive one to the program. So what we did last year is we really engaged in this really large campaign, especially being a border county, because we wanted to spread the message and make sure that as many people knew about this important change to the Medi-Cal program. So, we worked with some of our partners. We created really nice outreach materials. Some of these are I'll share some of these later with you. But basically, various languages, right? Various languages with that message, that individuals could not qualify regardless of immigration status. And it was really important for us to really engage with our community partners and community members, answering questions and helping, folks, enroll in this program. Currently, I believe that there's close to 1.5 million individuals in San Diego County who are enrolled in the Medi-Cal program. It's one of the largest programs that we administer, but it's just, great to know that now additional folks, can access their health coverage. And within our department, which is Hospital and Community Support Services, our job really is to be out here, like today's event, sharing information with our community partners. Like I mentioned, we're out at different events, and just really being the face of the county, letting folks know about all these resources that are potentially available to them and how they can apply. There's various platforms and all these platforms are noted on our flyers, where folks can just log in and apply on their own, or they can go to one of our family resource centers and apply there. But one of the recent resources that we have available to us and to all you is our 2 County of San Diego Live Well mobile offices. So there's these huge RVs, Live Well on the side, and like I said, they're at Jacob Center today and at Sweetwater High School. And what we do is when our partners request the vehicle, they also request staff to go out there. And these are staff that are, trained on these programs and how to educate folks on these programs and how to assist someone in applying for some of these programs. There's a website online on the Live Well San Diego, where any community partner can request a vehicle. It has an online calendar so that you can easily identify when it's available, where it's at. If you want to go to some of these events, all these are open to the public, free. And if you know of someone who's interested in having the mobile office go out to one of these events, all you have to do is go online, request it, free of charge, and you can also request the type of services that you want at this event. And maybe later, I'll reshare our presentation so that it has all that information on there, and I'll stop there and open it up to see if there's any questions. Yes.
You mentioned earlier, thank you very much for the presentation. You mentioned earlier, I have to talk. Thank you. So you mentioned earlier that there was a particular number that had started off and then you had grown to another number of people who enrolled. Can you tell us what is the percentage of people who are eligible and are not enrolled?
That's a great question. I would have to go back and take a peek at some of those numbers. We do issue, we have a monthly report where it tells us how many recipients we're receiving, but that type of data, I would have to, see if there's a way to pull that information.
That would be great information because it tells us who in our community is still unaware, and it allows us to target our information.
Correct. And that's a great point. And the department that we work with, and Mr. Garcia is my boss sitting right here today, our focus is really reaching out and trying to find those individuals. The office where we work at, we don't have a lobby like we do like at our Market Street office down the street where folks can actually go in and apply and talk to a worker. We don't have a lobby, so our job is not for the community to come to us, we go to them. So we stay really busy. We have staff members that are literally going out to events Monday through Sunday. From Borrego Springs to Chula Vista and everything in between. Our goal is to try and find those individuals who may not know about these programs, who may have questions about how to enroll in these programs. So we really try and do our best, and we're always open to suggestions. If someone says, hey, have you guys tried this? Oh, we love to hear it because, it's coming from the community, right? So it may be something that we haven't really thought about, but from social media to being out at small events, big events. We have staff who are actually outstationed at schools. So we have a worker who's stationed at Crawford High School. We have Castle Park Middle School. We have workers at San Diego State University, Southwestern College, UCSD. We try to be everywhere. We have workers also supporting hospitals. So our goal is just to be out in the community and really, trying to, be on the floor, be out there, hearing our folks out and seeing how, we can, get folks to engage with us and help them, hopefully enroll in some of these really, essential programs.
Hello, thank you for your presentation. Also, it's a lot of good information. My question is, if a person wants to be enrolled in more than one program, is that possible? So like if you get the EBT card, are you also eligible to get the other program for going to restaurants, or is it one or the other?
That's a great question. So usually when someone qualifies, let's say for the CalWorks program, right, and it's a family, we always try to evaluate to see what else they're eligible to. So most likely, if you're eligible to CalWorks, most likely you're going to be eligible to CalFresh and Medi-Cal, right? If you're eligible to Medi-Cal, because of the income guidelines, there's a good chance you might be eligible to CalFresh as well. So you're not really limited to what programs you're eligible to. So you may be eligible to all three, you may be eligible to two, you may be eligible to one. So it all depends really on the circumstances of the household, their income, do they have children or not. So we look at all circumstances to evaluate for benefits. So even if someone didn't know that they were eligible to Medi-Cal and they're just interested in CalFresh, they have no idea what Medi-Cal is, the worker's responsibility is to tell you, like, hey, excuse me, did you know that you could also be eligible to this other program, right? Because, we don't expect folks to really know, what the regulations are for these programs, and that's why we have workers who are trained to actually do that. So you're not limited really to, one program or the other. It depends on what that individual qualifies for. Yeah?
I have a question. So how do you get this information to individuals that are living on the streets? They're just as hungry as the person that's fortunate to have a place to stay. So how do you get this information to them? The only thing I hear about is churches and special people that give them sandwiches and things like that. But how do you get this information to them? Or what's the process that translates to that individual that's sleeping on the streets?
So that's a great question, and we understand that it's a big problem here in San Diego County and other places. So recently, within Health and Human Services Agency, there was a creation of another department specifically targeting homeless population called Office of Homeless Solutions. And what this department does is that they have social workers, they have eligibility staff. They also use the mobile office quite frequently, but their job is to identify those pockets of where these homeless individuals are. And I could say that every week, at least working with our department in collaboration with them, they're at various locations. A lot of them are like campsites where folks just, pop up their tents, and they're like fairly known locations where they know that there's going to be a large pocket of homeless individuals, and they go out there and they do outreach and they try and help folks out, whether it's a social worker working with them or enrolling them in programs like the CalFresh program. So that's their targeted population. So they're really focused on, ensuring that as many of these individuals who want the services get the services that they need. Thank you.
Dr. Ziago?
I'm from the city of Chula Vista, and they just developed homeless housing, like tiny homes. I was wondering if you have any programs set in those areas where the homeless will be, they'll try to get them there, and if you have anything in plan for them to try to get them off the street and located in an area where they can get fresh food and healthy, nutritious meals.
That's a great question. So again, because the agency is so large, that's a different department who would definitely be, looking at those kind of, ideas and projects. The department that we work with, which is again, it's self-sufficiency services, like our core business really is ensuring that as many folks who qualify are enrolled in these programs who, that really make a difference in people's lives. The CalFresh program, definitely helps people eat a little bit better, get that, fresh food that they need, health coverage. So again, different departments, a big agency, but self-sufficiency is, what we do.
I'm Carla.
Hi, Carla.
I would like to say that I'm delighted and ecstatic about the fact that you are an organization and department that is going out in the field to the people, to the community. It's such a salient aspect, and it's so necessary. Now, the question I had is, if you're out in the field and you're talking to people about CalWorks or something, and you notice that someone may not be as well physically or mentally, how do you handle that situation?
That's a great question, Carla. So usually when we go out to these events, we're paired up with other departments that's their specialty, right? So we can go out to an event where we're telling you what we know about these programs, right? But then we have our counterparts with behavioral health services and other aging and independent services who are out there. So we definitely will encourage that individual, hey, come and talk to our colleagues over here from this other department, and they're the experts who will definitely help that individual out, for that specific need.
I want to thank Ishmael and Esteban for being here today. And let's give them a round of applause. This is important. This is important information to share, and let's take advantage of it. And fortunately, because of technology, this will all be on YouTube, so I'll provide those links to all of you, and just share them as much as you possibly can. I see some important opportunities, particularly with the faith-based community, that I would like to work and partner with you to get this information in front of our market, which is our churches, where a lot of us, particularly African Americans, frequent, and a lot of them that are sitting in those pews are hungry, not getting enough food, enough nutrition, and a lot of the individuals also are being challenged with dementia and some of those issues as well, that are sitting right there in those pews every single Sunday. So I would like to partner with both of you to ensure we get you in front of those particular markets and populations and congregations to share this information. Thank you for coming. We're going to now ask our important esteemed panel that's here today to come up to the front here, and we want to introduce you, and you're going to take the mic and take the show on the road. Come on in. I think we got you got here just in time.
That's okay, sir. Somebody's key. I was gonna say, I can go find my new card now. Okay. Hello. Can I take a break real quick?
Just tell them, like, take a 2-minute break.
Testing, thank you.
Camera.
We're live on YouTube.
Today, in honor of, first of all, let's just clap for these wonderful leaders that have taken the time out of their schedule to be here today. BAPAC wanted to, this is the first ever, but we wanted to celebrate the AAPI Heritage Month. And I thought of just all the wonderful, these individuals that I've either seen on TV or we have worked together. And I wanted to just feature them. And this is going to be very informal, but we wanted just for you to just share your story and your journey today, how you came to this country, if you did, and what some of the challenges that you've encountered and overcome, and this place and space that you're in now. I thought it would just be important for us to just hear your stories. We don't hear enough stories and enough of your journey. And some of the stories and the journey you've had are also journeys that resonate with all of us here. But I thought it would be important to start with this. It's not political. It's just share your story. Is that okay? Just share your story and your journey. Thank you for being here. And we're going to start with this young man that I just recently met, who is he is now just recently appointed. His first ever meeting, he is now a commissioner on the Human Relations Commission. And he shared his story with us there that I thought was so powerful. None other than Assistant Professor Jojo Ramirez, and also about to complete his PhD studies as well. Jojo, take the floor.
Oh. Hello. Yes. Good afternoon. Thank you for the introduction and being part of this community. I actually wanted to start first to acknowledge that it's not here, and then you said not really political, but I think I need to connect it. HB 1537 passed in Florida, which, as we know what's happening in Florida and ethnic studies, now permits Asian American studies to be taught in high school. That is not a win for Asian Americans. It's actually been Asian Americans are being used as a wedge against Black studies, Chicano studies, and other forms of ethnic studies there. And also they're acknowledging that they want to also teach Native American studies. Now this history of wedging African Americans, Latinx folks against Asian Americans and Native Americans has been going on since the founding of this country. As a historian, kind of a historian, I'm not really a historian, I study history. The relationship between Black and APIs and Asian Americans in particular has gone all the way since the 13 colonies. There were Asian Americans who fought for the North during when the Confederate War was going on. The Code Noir, which was a law that prohibited Black folks from intermarrying in Louisiana and Mississippi, was used against Asians, so they wouldn't be allowed to intermarry as well. And so the history that connects both of our communities sometimes is not there. So if 1537 in Florida is being pushed, then it is our role as Asian Americans to put those histories and our connections with the Black community into the forefront of those classrooms. There's a lot of images here of Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King and Thich Nhat Hanh talked about anti-war in Vietnam. We had Yori Kochiyama with Malcolm X. Our connections has always been there. So if this wedge is going to happen and this quote unquote model minority of us being APIs being raised up on the backs and struggles of Black and Latinx communities, then it is our role as educators to make sure that we are complicating our own histories and saying that we're not here, we can't be here without the black experience and the black racial politics that has happened. Because our race and our identity was founded on the 1960s San Francisco ethnic studies movement. And so the term Asian Americans was not real until the 1960s. We were called Orientals. And it was actually African Americans in San Francisco and Berkeley that really encouraged the first Asian American movements and had to create the term Asian American, and later on welcoming Pacific Islander communities into a really awkward space of what this huge continent and these group of islands are. And another thing when it comes to, and I was talking about this in the commissioner's floor, that the geographies of Asia has never been complete. So it's always part of American imagination. So in the 1940s and 50s, West Asians, now what would be considered Arabs, became white. And it wasn't necessarily because they were white and they were always being classified as West Asians, even if they come here as refugees. The United Nations says that they're West Asians, but when they become citizens, they become white. And all of that came from laws that dictated in the 1940s on what was Jesus' race. So there was what they called the Jesus laws that determined that Jesus had to be white and not brown or West Asians or dark-skinned. And so laws later on designated certain parts of Asia as white, right? And so these things, when we think about Asian Americans, for me, coming here as a refugee, even complications of what it means to be Asian back, quote unquote, at home, is very integral to how I identify as here. I was born, I think, 1985. I don't really have a birth certificate. I was born in a village. I'm an indigenous person from the Philippines. We didn't get our citizenship rights and full recognition by the Philippine government till 1996. We were considered an ethnic and tribal minority with citizenship benefits. I became Filipino only in the United States when I'm not Filipino in the Philippines. Also, in the 1905, 1908, U.S. government, with the support of the Philippine government at that time, and I'm using the term that they used back then, similar to the projects that were happening in Australia, they had what they called the Bioorganic Acts, or colloquially, at that time, again, I'm using this as a historical context, they call it Breed the Negro Program away. So my grandmother is registered as an Aboriginal Black indigenous person, and there were multiple experiments on various indigenous tribes who were darker skinned, closer to Melanesians, and shorter, to see how many generations of our blackness would be away. So under federal law in the Philippines, I'm still black because it's a matriarchal society law which designates that it's my grandmother's mother's racial identity in the Philippines as my ethnic identity. I can't pass as black. I don't demand to pass as black, but that means that I have a burden to make sure that I am lifting black communities and not only elevating the black communities in the Philippines, the Aboriginal folks there, the Aitas, which we colloquially call negritos actually, that for me who's not black passing, but is federally recognized as black in the Philippines. And my relationship with the black community here must always be in conversation. I can't exist in the United States without knowing what black struggle is, black history is, and what my role is as a non-black but politically designated black person in the Philippines means to be Asian American. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. This is my brother, maybe cousin.
We'll go cousin.
My name is Joanne Fields, and I am of Filipino descent. My kids are half African American and Filipino, so I find it very, it's my responsibility to learn and teach my kids both cultures and heritage. So I lean to the village to teach their African American side. And I have to do my own research and make sure that the information I'm sharing is correct. I have the typical Filipino story. My dad came by way of the Navy. My mom came on her own as a nurse. Surprise. But I'm your atypical Filipino. I'm not a nurse. And, but I am a very strong advocate for communities of color, and I'm very proud of it. I appreciate that we are celebrating Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month, but I want to share with you, let's define who is Asian and who is Pacific Islander. You heard one part from soon-to-be Dr. Ramirez. But when I ask you, who is Asian? Who do you think? First three, who comes to mind? Anyone? Japanese, Chinese, Vietnamese, Hmong, Cambodian, Lao, Thai, Native Hawaiian, Samoan, Chamorro, Tongan, and Filipino. People don't even consider Persian. There's South Asian. Can you name our South Asian communities?
Pakistani, Afghan, Indian, Sri Lankan. We have a growing South Asian community here in San Diego, too.
So that's a huge umbrella. But when I asked you who is Asian, you said Japanese and Chinese repeatedly. But that whole umbrella supposed to capture all of us. So you can see why when we advocate, or for some that want to speak up, because usually as a female, we're supposed to be submissive. You're not supposed to speak out. You're supposed to just do the work. You're supposed to be a nurse. But I'm not any of what I'm supposed to be doing, but I appreciate God's gift of gab and connecting with all of you so I can share. But I want to share with you fun facts. Did you know the father of Black History Month, Carter G. Woodson, was a principal in the Philippines? If you Google Carter G. Woodson, Philippines, you will see that he established schools. And that's where he was inspired to document Black history, was there in the Philippines. That Buffalo Soldiers were also stationed in the Philippines. That the Philippines was a territory of the United States. So I don't care about ethnic studies, really, because our history is American history. When they bombed Hawaii, they concurrently bombed in Guam and the Philippines, not because we're Hawaiian or Filipino or Guamanian, because the US bases were there. That's why they bombed those areas, those territories. We were serving under the US flag. The Bataan Death March included American troops. 76,000 troops were POWs, prisoners of war, that marched a death march from a concentration camp for 65 miles, tortured by the Japanese, without food, in the heat, in humidity, but that's not taught. And that's not Filipino history, that's American history. And July 22nd here in San Diego, we celebrate, and I want to invite all of you to celebrate with us, Filipino American, I'm calling it, it is a holiday, you can Google that too. Filipino American Friendship Day was a day created to have our communities, our countries, have a strong and positive relationship after we leave being governed by the United States. So our Independence Day from the United States governing us is on July 4th, 1946. That's when the Treaty of Manila was signed. And we transitioned to become the Republic of the Philippines. So we have an Independence Day. But how do we tell that when the US celebrates the Independence Day, July 4th, with fireworks and barbecues? But it's important for us to tell the story. We know it to be true. It's in the Library of Congress. All that I've shared with you is in the Library of Congress. But the book's not written yet. The curriculum's not written yet. But I feel like it's our responsibility to share an oral history with all of you. And you can fact find, and you will see that it is true. And we don't have to wait for someone else to tell our story. So I really appreciate Ellen and BAPAC for giving us this platform, and then now World Wide Web, that we're on YouTube and on social media, that we are sharing our history. We are not foreigners. We're your neighbors. We are your classmates, your teacher, our former registrar of voters. And when you look, and I was trying to get a cheat sheet going, when you look at the registrar of voters, people don't realize our language is also our education and our voter registration is in Asian languages because there's a large number of Asians, Pacific Islanders, but in specific languages in Chinese, Filipino, and Vietnamese. And they also, in some cases, in some areas of the community, Arabic, Japanese, Korean, and Laotian is also spoken, or you have assistance for voting, which is important to know. But it's not up to only the registrar of voters to have that service for us, but it's for all of us to know that it's available, because I'm sure you have a neighbor. I'm sure you're going to come across someone when you're registering people to vote, what language services are available. So I don't want to take up everybody's time, but I just wanted to give you some nuggets of information, some fun facts, and I hope to share with you again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joanne. Let me just thank BAPAC as well as Ellen on inviting me to come and speak before all of you today. Let me just say I've just learned a whole lot about our Asian American communities. But let me kind of turn it a little bit, kind of like what Joanne says. I feel like I am kind of one of those untypical Asian Americans where I ended up decided to go into the social sciences as opposed to into the pure sciences, as which we are kind of Asians, all Asians are kind of seen as being in the engineering front or the sciences or in, I'm sorry?
Healthcare.
Healthcare, that's exactly right. I decided to go into something that is highly unusual for Asian Americans, at least seen from the outside. Never did I know that I would land in government, because I thought, according to my parents, that I was destined to become an attorney, not of my choice. And that's where I was geared towards. So I really want to talk about and go back to what Ellen was trying to convey, which is what is our personal stories? How did we end up in San Diego? Let me just say that my life has made its way full circle, and my parents' is as well, is when I came to the United States, I was not born yet. My parents fled Vietnam as a result of the Vietnam War as refugees, and we landed here in San Diego, Camp Pendleton, as the very first step on U.S. soil. From there, we went to the four corners of the United States on Navajo Nation, the Diné tribe. And it was there where I was born. And to get me born, we had to cross, because it was the four corners, we lived in Arizona, we had to cross the border into New Mexico, because that was where the closest hospital was in this very rural area of the United States. As opposed to going back to California, to frankly the Orange County area, where there was a number of individuals that were going and congregating of Vietnamese refugees. My parents decided to go to Salt Lake City, Utah. And so when you think about my background, I was probably one of the only, as I would say, my parents was probably the first Vietnamese family in the state of Utah, particularly in Salt Lake. So as you can understand is that my interactions and of going from elementary school through high school, through college, or middle school through high school, through college, I was a minority in very many different ways, both in religion, but also in skin color, as well as culturally. I just remember my parents coming to the United States. They didn't know what snow was. And so when snow fell in the state of Utah, they thought it was salt because of Salt Lake. So for a number of different reasons, life in growing up in the United States was very difficult at the very early ages of my life, from a number of different ways. The way we spoke, the way we dressed, the way we lived our lives. We didn't know how to use showers. In fact, for the longest time, my parents had a 5-gallon bucket in the bathtub for us to take a bath. It was using the showers. We didn't know what a dishwasher was. For the longest time, we washed the dishes throughout my entire life until we did own a dishwasher. So what we take for granted here, and all of the pleasantries of living life in the United States, is something that more recent immigrant or refugees, as we see even to today, is much more difficult, what we take for granted. Let me just say that I found myself not going to law school, which I was planning on going to law school, but find myself in elections as my first real job, as I would say, in the Salt Lake County Clerk's Office. And that's where, this year's theme of AANHPI, or AAPI, also known as, is advancing leaders of opportunities, with opportunities. And as I reflect upon those words, I think about all the opportunities when I started getting into working at Salt Lake County Clerk's Office, and really starting at the lowest levels that you could as a temporary worker, still going to college at the University of Utah, and then ultimately being recognized for my hard work. Not for the background that I was from, but more along the lines of being recognized for the hard work that I was pouring into my work, regardless of what it was, whether it was sweeping the floor or doing something more important than that. And that's one of probably the humbleness and the humility that I come with when thinking about my current job as the Assistant Chief Administrative Officer for the county. I spent effectively my career in elections for 25 years. Before being appointed by our Chief Administrative Officer, Helen Robbins-Meyer, as the Assistant Chief Administrative Officer of the county. I came from Salt Lake to Ohio, spent my time in Ohio for a couple of years, and I think that's where one of my first experiences of living outside Utah, Salt Lake, where I saw the level of diversity. But I also understood throughout my entire career the level of if you will, discriminatory practices or racial epithets that was called onto me, whether it was at a very young age or even in my adult age and in my career. I remember sitting in a board meeting where a person came up and says, "There's not enough diversity on that board. You've got one and a piece of diversity on that board." And as I canvassed who was sitting around a round table, I recognized that the piece that they were referring to was me. And so when I could think about what Professor Jojo was saying about being recognized of a person of skin, in certain circles, Asians are not even considered a minority. And so that took me aback of seeing it, that here I am in my professional career being considered something other than who I was and who I believe in and recognize and celebrate. Then I came to San Diego County after 3.5 years in Ohio, and coming to San Diego County and have lived here since then, and raising our 4 boys. My 4 boys, or actually 2 of the 4 boys, are mixed, half Caucasian, half Vietnamese. And getting to see how they live their life and how they grow up. And being proud when my son, who's 13 years of age today, can bring a pair of chopsticks to school and use that to eat what he loves and would love to eat every single day, which is his ramen noodles, his top ramen noodles. But and not be shy about that, and being confident in who he is at this day and age. So to be, and I think about all the opportunities that I've been given, makes me think about how I can give back, knowing that we have a huge growing population here in the county, and not just to our Asian American populations, but all minority populations, as we, as the county, seek to provide services that really have not been elevated or have not had the opportunities that I was given, and how do we give that back? So with that being said, I'm going to turn the time over to the council member, Councilmember Hsu.
Well, thank you, Michael. So thank you for having me here, and thank you for the founders of Black History Month, actually, because, Ellen, thank you for inviting me to this event, but you know, this event wouldn't have been happening if it wasn't for Black History Month, because it was the Black History Month that pointed out that we are teaching this thing that wasn't used, this term that wasn't used before, Eurocentric history. And once we created the word Eurocentric history, we then knew that there were other truths, other histories. And it started with Black History Month and the need for that, and that was the gateway to all the other months that we have now. And that created API month. So that's the origin of these months that we've had, and I think it's important for us to point that out. And that story itself is diverse too. So thank you, Joanne, for bringing that up. So, so I'm Jack Shu, and something happened a few years ago in La Mesa, and I decided to get into politics when I was happily retired for 15 years with nice, you know, I had great ideas about retirement and having fun, and all of a sudden something got in my head, and I ran for office, and I even won. So now I'm a city council member. So that's interesting. I may be the first Asian council member in the city of La Mesa, but that wasn't that earth-shattering in that we've already had, by that time, a Democrat, and we had Akila Weber as a council member at the time. So it was pretty cool. But I think this whole issue of and topic of having these different months is so critical and important. It's important for us to understand a greater history, and that there are multiple truths, multiple stories, multiple histories for us to understand and how they interact. We have to do that before we really can get to our final point of interacting better and being a better community, a more united community. That's the way we have to approach things when we really deal with diversity, and if we really want to fight hate, which I'll talk about towards the end. So my history, or my story, I was actually born in Tokyo, Japan, with a long history with my parents being in Japan versus China, and versus being in Taiwan. But that's part of Asian history. I came to the United States when I was 6 years old. When I got into the LA Unified School District and you get checked out by the nurse, she thought my eyes weren't so good because I couldn't read those letters very well. Didn't know my alphabet that well. I should have done okay. Actually, my eyes did get bad later in life. But that was a wake-up call into how we enter into these different cultures and language issues, right? Because at that time, I spoke mostly all Japanese. Forgot my Japanese in 6 months, retained a little Chinese, and then struggled with English for the rest of my life. So that's where I'm at now with that story. Went through high school in almost all black high school, so I spoke black really well, and I think it was interesting to deal with all my friends at the time. In fact, this is an interesting point. I became president of Knights, which is a service club in high school. And someone pointed out a few years ago, someone noted that, in fact, it was a reporter that emailed me and said, "Do you know Larry Elders? I mean, the guy running for governor?" I said, "Oh, no, I don't know that guy." So that's interesting because we have a record here that shows that you went to high school with him. So, oh, that's interesting. He texted me or he emailed me a photograph from my yearbook, and I'm standing in the corner of the Knights, picture of the Knights Club, and 3 persons down was Larry Elder from Crenshaw High School. Great. Didn't remember him. And then I started thinking, I kind of remember him. But at that time, he wasn't a prominent member. Anyway, so that was my background. In high school, I went to Humboldt State, which is on the other side of the Redwood Curtain near Eureka. majored in wildlife management, which was very unusual for Asian American because I was supposed to probably major in, some other science, accounting or something. But I was the youngest of five, meaning I was allowed to do something different. So wildlife management was my major. Somehow ended up in recreation, worked for the Forest Service and also National Park Service, and then somehow got into diversity issues and youth programs, and then started a career with state parks for 29 years. So I finished as a park superintendent early, was also involved with law enforcement as well as preserving natural, trying to save Bambi. But along the way, I understood more about institutional racism and dealt with diversity issues and diversity in environmental education and outdoor education. So that was my background going in, which then later on in retirement got more involved with social action and dealing with all kinds of hate in our communities. So I dealt with a lot of issues along those lines. And then along comes this riot we had in La Mesa just as COVID was breaking out, and saw how desperately our governing systems needed help. And I thought maybe being a council member might be a way to help. But that's a different struggle, because I've been telling people, I now see government from the inside rather than from the outside. I can tell you, the view from the outside is better. So that's where we are in terms of where I am now. And I think it's so important for us to examine not only each month and the histories and information from each group that has a month, and probably another dozen months need to be created as well. But we also, at the same time, talk about what are the solutions. That's why I bring up things like, when I first got to City Council, I wanted to talk about Fred Korematsu and how he successfully showed that the government was wrong and won his case. That's why I bring up later that year Larry Etalang. And what was his message? His message was real simple. If you really want to beat the man, and that was a term back in the 60s and 70s, if you really want to beat the man, you've got to join forces. And so he joined forces with Cesar Chavez and Dolores. And because they joined forces, they were able to beat the farm owners. We haven't really established or really picked up on his lesson very well, and we need to remember that the issue of divide and conquer, that is continuing. That continues today, and we have to remember that. So if we really want to beat and win, we've got to join forces. But we have a habit of dividing ourselves, and that's what's going on. And of course, I could tell you a lot of long stories about what's going on in politics in East County, in La Mesa, and how we lose because we divide ourselves, and we haven't learned that. So maybe I could comment later about ethnocentrism and greater understanding, because we don't really know well. We don't know that Mishkan Afghan, who ran for city council in the state of La Mesa, is an Asian American person and a person of color, and was discriminated greatly by our society. But that was denied her, not by the whites, but people of color. That was denied her by other minorities. We have racism in our society, and all of us are part of that society. And it defeats ourselves and those who are fighting for social justice. So I think that's the lesson that I've picked up in the last few years, and the challenges we meet. I'm actually more of an environmentalist than a social. So I can tell you a huge story about with regards to environmental justice, economic justice, why we have more and more disparity between rich and poor. It's because of Democrats, not because of Republicans. we do this to ourselves. So we have to remember that. So that's another story which we'll have to save when we have discussion about environmental issues, economic issues, and how we have to do a better job. Thank you.
Marie, you're on.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'll bring the fun side in this. My name is Aurora Marie Dolopo Zhivago, okay? And no, that's not a Filipino name. They call me Dr. Zhivago. The students call me Dr. Zhivago. And there's a long story. Put on your seatbelts. My grandfather was Thomas Dolopo. He was one of the first Filipinos to enlist in the United States Navy in 1903. Okay. It's a story because it's facts here. My uncle wrote the manuscript. It's called The Roots. And I created a book called The Sakura. I didn't know about this until after I wrote the book. Okay? And so I read this because my cousin, who is enlisted in the United States Navy, gave it to me, and she said, "You need to read this, Marie. This is about our grandfather." He wanted to become a priest, but during the Spanish occupancy, his father was killed for helping, the resistance, and he was enrolled in college in Manila, and his brother came to visit him and said, "Our father has died." He was so distraught that he quit college and just fled, just was in mental ruin. How is he going to finish college without the support of his father and his godfather? So he roamed the streets of Manila homeless and in despair until the United States Navy were enlisting Filipinos to fight in World War I. So he enlisted, but he didn't have any identification. So he was roaming around looking for identification, and he found a foreigner, Thomas Dolopo. My grandfather's real name is Potencio, and he just was out of the kindness of someone's heart, gave him that identification, and he enlisted in the United States Navy. It was written here that he saved a platoon of Marines coming to the Philippines, World War I. The ship caught on fire, and he put the fire out, but he suffered third-degree burns and was hospitalized for a year. Okay. After that, he retired. In 1926, he was part of the elite group, the Freemasonry in the Philippines, in Olongapo. And this is a medal that I got off eBay. It's actually from Clark Air Force, the military base, for $50. Can you imagine that? And it has the symbol of the Freemasonry in Olongapo. And in that group, as a retired veteran, he did community service for, the people that didn't have any money or any food, orphans. And his wife, Cecilia Dolopo, was by his side helping him. Let's flash forward to that. He applied for veterans benefits because the admiral commander helped him with that. Here's the paperwork. Apply for retirement. So he applied, and he got paid $1.74 for being a military retired veteran. $1.74, and so that's in the National Congressional Series set. You can see his name there, and I have paperwork here if you want to look at it. So I've been collecting all of these paperwork. In the roots, it has his social security number, enlistment number, and civil service records. Okay, and that got ruined in the flood of Subic and Olongapo. There's been floods, and relatives have been trying to keep the medals and things like that. He got a Medal of Honor for saving those Marines back then, and right here on his uniform, it says here, the last day of wearing a uniform adorned with medals he achieved while on duty. He figured to himself that this is the saltiest, and he retired for good. So he was a veteran of the United States Navy. And let's flash forward to 1945 when it was World War II. The Japanese occupancy. They ransacked his home and took everything. They found out he was an American U.S. Navy's person, and they didn't believe that he was retired. They were like making fun of him. You're not retired. So they took all of his belongings, the American flag and the medals, and they dragged him to the middle of the village and tied him to a post. And they said, you will be an example of what will happen to all these people here if you try to do anything. This is what's going to happen to you. He was beaten. He was tied there for a long time and left for dead. Bataan Death March. And that horrific time in the Philippines, they took villagers, they took military, they took them on boats, and they just kind of like put them like sardines and ghost ships that were going to sail to Japan for slave. I mean, I read some of these things and I'm just kind of, wow. But my grandfather escaped. They helped him escape. And he fled with the guerrilla, Filipino guerrilla, and they fought. They fought back until the atomic bomb, right? And so that's my history. My dad joined the military, and I was born on Clark Air Force, the military base, and by a Navy doctor. And my mom and dad had dreams to come to the United States, and San Diego was the first place they wanted to come to. So I came here, and my dad couldn't afford anything, so we lived in a shack in Barrio Logan. And my dad had to bike to the ships. And my mom, finally, she got a job at Kyocera years later. She became a manager, a supervisor. And she was in charge of the electrical engineers at Kyocera, a Japanese company. And how ironic is that, right? So years later, I attended Morris High School, predominantly, African American. Back in the days, we just said black, And it was 1986, and ready to start my senior year, and a lot of gang war, violence, and a body was left for dead on the lawn, and I'm pretty sure my classmates remember that, right? My mom said, no. We're going to transfer you to University City High School in La Jolla. My senior year, I was in a class with 10th graders learning HTML greeting cards. They had computers, computer science, 86. I was like, what is this? I was like, you talk Big Bang. There were lots of geeks in my class typing away, and I was like, what am I doing in this class? That was my first taste of computer science. Then I graduated design at FIDM, a fashion institute, because I didn't want to be a nurse. But I couldn't get a job. I was a computer-aided design assistant with a knockoff company in National City. They copied Chanel and Dior. $3.75 an hour. How am I going to pay back my student loans? So I went back to school, Southwestern College, and became a surgical technologist. And then I got married and did that for 18 years. My last name, Zhivago. And what do you think the surgeons called me? Oh, Dr. Zhivago, you're here. Let's do some neurosurgery. I did neurosurgery. I saw life and I saw death. 18 years of that. I wasn't meant to do that. So I quit and I went back to graphic design and art. Flash forward, I met some ladies at the National Negro Council, right? National Council of Negro Women, San Diego. And they invited me to speak on behalf of the students and the girls that wanted to join, wanted to go to college. And then after that, I met Ellen Nash. And I did a presentation and honoree for BAPAC. And working in the school system as a digital media teacher, there's only 5 of us in city of Chula Vista. 5, okay? Digital media is a program part of the VAPA, Visual and Performing Arts. One instance, I had to search for updated TVs for the classroom. This was right before the pandemic. You still have schools out there that have no technology, no money. It's hard, it really is. And I go back to 1986, and I'm learning HTML, digital greeting cards. There is a divide of what you have in educational system, okay? It's sad, it really is. Why can't we have the same tools that these other schools have? And so it's still a problem. We just got a grant for VAPA, and it's going to help, employ more teachers, visual and performing arts teachers. But I sit here today because I'm an entrepreneur, and I know, these kids need to know more about computer science, coding, and so also with that, I developed an app called Pals AI. And on Tuesday, I did a presentation for a class in high school, and I asked them, I said, what do you want to be? I want to be a nurse. I want to be a gaming creator. Some of them, I want to be an electrical engineer. Good for you. So if I can do it, you can do it. Just give them the tools. Give them the tools that they need, and you can succeed. Because coming from where I came from, the roots in the Philippines, and here I am today. My husband, he works for the Department of Justice, and he's trying to help keep off the drugs from the community, and here I am helping the youth. So I am so proud to be here amongst all of you. You're very, informative and supportive for the community, and that matters here. And Ellen, thank you. I'm the moth and you're the flame. You keep going.
One more. Let's just give them one more. This is so awesome. We learned so much today. And I just want some last words. Anyone have any comments or questions before we end today? This has been fabulous, absolutely fabulous. I learned so much from these individuals today. But one of the most important common themes that I heard today was, and we all heard, is the importance of solidarity. We cannot make it without you, and you can't make it without us. And I believe this is a start of a true, strong solidarity that we're going to demonstrate to the citizens of San Diego, that there is a tight collaboration between communities, Asian American, the Filipino, Islander communities, and that solidarity is going to come with us getting to understand and know each other, and know our history,
and respect that history. So this is the inaugural AAPI. We want to grow this. I already have a vision of just growing this day, this celebration. I did actually order lumpia today, so that's a start. But next year we're going to make this bigger and better because we love you all.
We love you.
And yeah, do we have a question or a comment from anyone? Oh, Elise is asking the difference between running the registrar's office and now he's the administrative assistant or assistant administrator, chief administrative officer to the San Diego County. That's huge. That's a good one. Congratulations. Awesome.
Alyssa, I don't know where to even start. Let me just say, when you're in elections and you've been doing it for so long, you kind of seen everything from all different points of views. And it changes every election. That's probably one of the things, like every election was different. But you knew the various laws, whether it's state or federal laws. You knew what your budget was. You knew how to interact with the respective communities. You knew you can anticipate. I think that's the anticipatory side of it. Becoming and working for the chief administrative officer and opening that world up to 49 other different offices and departments that span everything from animal services to the medical examiners to public safety side, which is the sheriff and the district attorney's office, to anything related to land use. And you're opening up your budget from, let's say, anywhere from like a $30 million budget now to $8.1 billion, which we just talked about. When you're opening up the doors to conversations around Hep A versus elections, versus things like our homeless populations that there were a number of questions on, you see a huge distinction as it was described to me, and it was kind of resonated for me, which is people who want to vote will vote. The difference between that and the other types of services that the county provides is there are certain situations that have to come and receive the services of the county because they are in dire straits. And I think that's probably very poignant for me is that this is where county government needs to be at, not just providing in a place for individuals to come and vote, but also receive services when they're in a place where they are not either mentally healthy or whether or not they need the actual services of the counties to help them, support them through getting to the next stage of their respective life. And I think for me it's almost more gratifying to kind of see the nearly 20,000 employees of the county as opposed to the 60 employees of the county, all moving in unison in whatever initiative that we are working towards. In certain cases, it's elections one day. In another case, it's our unaccompanied minors that are going to be coming and being housed at the convention center. So I think for me is where it's personal is how, and this is kind of going back to life makes its way full circle for me, is as my family stepped into U.S. soil when they came to the United States, and here I am back in the same county that gave us so much to be able to make a career out of this, and then also giving back, and then also seeing the services that we needed to be able to get to where we're at today. So I think that's more personal when it comes down to that, but also something that drives me from a passion point of view than just election itself. Now, don't get me wrong, elections will always be a part of me, but this other now piece, like social services and the self-sufficiency service that you heard today about CalFresh, CalWorks, that 1.3 million of citizens in the United States or residents of the county are on some type of social services programs, well, that's coming through the county. So we're making big differences in that regard, and it's really nice to be able to see that on a daily front as opposed to see it from one very narrow point of view when it comes down to elections.
Thank you. Great answer, great answer. I just want to personally say that each one of you have always been connected to BAPAC, to Dr. Willie Blair, to a lot of BAPAC members' events. From now, JoJo just entered into this space, and that phone call I made to him was just powerful. In regards to the Human Relations Commission, and then when he really brought us up to speed on the history of the journey that we all have been on. And Joanne has been, we've probably known each other for at least 20 years in regards to BAPAC and the Black community, and all the work that she does is just amazing. But there's a connection I'm trying to make, and Michael, Phil, we met in regards to voter registration when we had you at an event and at BAPAC a few years before COVID. Yeah. And Jack Shue called me out of clear blue sky during COVID. How can we partner and connect with the Black community? Because he was concerned about the numbers. The numbers were so low at that time in regards to vaccination, and he called me out of clear blue sky. And then Dr. Marie, we just connected on BAPAC way before, many years ago, about 6 or 7 years ago. But we've remained good friends and connecting. I've watched our journey through Facebook. So I just want to say that there has been a connection that we all have. And I want all of you to make sure you get cards and connections with these powerful leaders, because they really have a lot to contribute to the success of our community, particularly here in San Diego, and America's finest city. I had reached out to Mayor Gloria to be here, but I gave him a break. I said, you don't need to come. We have powerful leaders here that we need to showcase. And he said, thank you, I get a break today. He's not break, he has all kinds of events anyway. And I said, but we got the powerhouse here in BAPAC, and we just thank you all for being here. Let's give another applause. We're going to end right now, but we do have food to serve, and we want you to just network, but really get connected to these powerful leaders, because they definitely can take us to a whole nother level. Thank you so much for being here.